This video is gonna feel like it's like all over the place, but honestly, it's pretty much how I feel. Um, I have moments where everything feels unreal, or that it just feels like incomplete. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, to be honest with you. Like, I have moments where I come to terms with everything and I feel good and I feel optimistic about the future. But then I have other moments where I'm just like, you kind of have to accept the inevitable, if that makes any sense. I don't think it does. Like right now, as I'm getting dressed and I'm getting ready, like I have a small part of me that's like, Sam, you should just stay home and relax. But then it's like, what good does relaxing do if my brain is running at 30 miles per hour? Or even faster than that, like 100 miles per hour. And I really can't. Like, all I can do is try to process certain things. But it's like, how do you process one thing and then move on and process another, but then feel like you need to go back and revisit something from that other thing? Like, I've cried in this past like 2 weeks. I have cried from places that I've never known. I have felt loneliness and heartbreak from places that I have never known possible. And it scares me, but I also, in a weird way, welcome it with open arms, if that makes any sense. Sometimes I really do think that like I got way too comfortable in a situation that I felt, now that I think back, and I'm like, was like a ticking bomb. Like, I like to think that maybe, not maybe, I was genuinely happy. But that's what I mean. Like, I go from processing one thing to then thinking about something else, because then it's like, okay, like, I can't let my brain go there, because if my brain goes there, then it's gonna affect my health. Like, I wish that I was able to just dive all the way in and just feel everything without being like, there's a possibility that I might end up in the emergency room. I feel like this video might be really long, because I feel like this might just be a journal or an entry of what I'm thinking. Yeah. Hey guys. So first of all, let me start by saying I'm so happy to be back. I know that I took a long break. And it does feel kind of weird doing this again. Not weird like in a bad way, but just weird because I guess because I didn't do it for so long, that it just feels off. I know I was probably confusing from the first bit of the video, of what's going on. I want to be completely transparent about what I'm going through. First of all, let me say this is not going to be really easy. So if I break down crying or if I pause, just stay with me, okay? So I've been going through a lot. I'm sorry. I've been going through a lot. So let me just rip this off like a band-aid. Okay. So in the beginning of the year, I was admitted because I had like a miniature stroke. So when I was admitted, they were running a whole bunch of tests and they did a stress test on me. Stress test is pretty much to check like how your heart's doing. They do it two different ways. They either put you on a machine where you run and they like so that way they can check like the speed of your heart, or they inject you with something. Since my heart was being a little weird when I got admitted, they didn't want to put me to run, so they injected me. The most weirdest feeling ever in the world. It felt so weird because you're laying still, but your heart is beating like you're working out. So when they did that, they saw that my heart was being irregular, like it had abnormalities, but they couldn't test it for too long because I was already there for a week. And then when they did the ultrasound of the MRI of my head, they found that I had a pinched nerve in the back of my head. So they just told me to follow up with my doctor and let my doctor know. But then also because of COVID and everything, it was extremely hard to like follow up with my doctor, and then my doctor ended up retiring. So I was like floating in between doctors. Mind you, also in this time, my sugar was like out of control. It was in the 300s. Mind you, your sugars are supposed to be between 80 to 180. Those are the regular numbers for blood sugars. And mine's was in the 200s, 300s, and sometimes it wouldn't even mark on my machine. So I was dealing with that. And then about, I want to say, a little bit after February, I started getting this intense chest pain. But my hospital wasn't providing like in-person visits, so it was extremely hard trying to get seen in person. And then I also didn't want to go back to the emergency room because I was like, they can only do so much. Like your doctor needs to be the one to like provide tests, right? So about a month ago, I ended up going because I started getting these side effects where my hands and my legs would like fall asleep. And then I would start getting like tingling sensations on both. Like, you know, when when your leg falls asleep and then it starts waking up and you have that tingliness, I started getting that like really often. And then the chest pain was like unbearable. It was like the worst pain that I've ever been to. So I finally went to the doctor. And when I went, they told me that I do have an irregular heartbeat. My heartbeat is beating slower than it's supposed to. So it's not pumping the correct blood throughout my body. So that's why I'm getting that numbness and like my limbs are falling asleep because it's not getting the proper circulation throughout my body. So he said that it could be one or two things. He was like, the first one, he said that it could be the muscle around my heart that it's contracting too hard, that it's not letting my heart beat the way that it's supposed to. He said, second, it can be that you have clogged arteries close to your heart. That's also the reason why it's not letting your heart pump the way that it's supposed to. He was like, so if it's the muscle, what I would like to do is I would want to go in and basically try to put the muscle to sleep. And if that doesn't work, I would like to, he was like, the next option would be to cut a chunk out. He said the only risk about that is that if my heart is enlarged, there's a possibility that I won't make it. He said there's a 75% chance that I would probably die on the operating table. And he said there's a 5% chance also that they'll be able to revive me. But he said that 5% goes down even lower because of my liver. And then he said, also, if it's not that and it's the clogged arteries, that he would have to do the surgery where they go in through your thigh and go up and open up your veins to your heart and put a stent in. He said, Mr. Stewart, all of these things are extremely dangerous. He was like, but at the rate that you're going now and how, the side effects that you're having with everything, there's a strong possibility that you might not be here for too long, that you only possibly have 2 years. When he said that, it was like a ton of bricks hitting my body, because I was like, how do I tell the people that I love closest to me that they only have a matter of time with me? So it took an entire month for me to process everything. And then I had a situation, I don't want to talk about it, but I had a situation with someone that kind of brought it out. I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. Like, I wanted to get, to go and get the results to and definitely find out what it was. But then I had the situation with someone, and I was in a really dark place that I just started spewing everything out, because I was like, how are you choosing to do this to me right now when I'm so fucking scared? But I'm eternally grateful for this person, and I still love them to this day. And I wish them nothing but the best. But sometimes it's a little hard, because all I want to do is reach out to this person. But I know that I can't, because I also have to respect their boundaries and give them space. So with that, I ended up going to get, to find out indefinitely what it was. And so they did, and give me a second. They did a MRI, a CT scan, and an ultrasound. The MRI was to check the muscle of my heart. The ultrasound was to check how the waves and how my heart was beating. The CT scan was to check the nerves and the blood vessels. So they were going to do one with contrast and without. And then they were also going to do blood tests to give me like an in-depth of how and when this started. So that way they can give me a better estimate of time. So when they're doing the MRI, the whole fucking time, the guy is like, ooh, ooh. And in my head, I'm like, if you don't shut the fuck up with your oohs and ahs, like, I'm already like on 10. And this person is not making it any more easier for me to like be able to be here and like process everything correctly and not be scared out of my fucking mind. So then after that, I go to a different room and it's this lady and she can tell that I'm like freaking out. And she puts her hand on my shoulder and she's like, sweetheart, take a deep breath. Everything's gonna be okay. We're gonna get the results that the doctor needs. Just take a deep breath. So she starts doing the ultrasound. And I can see from the look on her face that she's like looking at it like in shock. So I'm like, in my head, I'm like, fuck, Sam. This is it. This is it. Like, this is it. So then she injects me. First she does it. She does the CT scan without the contrast. And then she's like, okay, sweetheart, we're gonna put the contrast. And I was like, okay. So she puts the contrast in, and after that, she's like, okay, we're done. Your doctor should have the results between 30 to 45 minutes. She was like, in that time, if you want to go and, you know, you want to go get your blood test. And I was like, okay. So I went and right before she poked me, she asked me, she was like, Mr. Stewart, have you ate today? And I was like, yeah, I did. And she was like, so we won't be able to do the blood test today because the doctor ordered them for you to be fasting. And I was like, oh, fuck. Okay. I was like, they didn't tell me that. And she was like, yeah. She was like, so if you want to come on a different day to be able to do this. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll come on a different day. So I go and I sit in the lobby and I'm like trying to paint a picture in my head of like the best possible outcome that is probably just, heartburn. I'm just possibly getting heartburn and that's what I'm feeling. And it's really bad heartburn that it's like making my heart slow down. I'm trying to calm myself down. I'm trying to give myself like the best bullshit ass excuse. But then at the same time, I'm like, okay, what if it's both? What if it's the muscle and I have clogged arteries? What if he tells me like, Sam, you only have, like, we thought it was a year, 2 years, but you only have a year to 6 months. Then I was like trying not to cry in the lobby. So I ended up like grabbing my headphones and just putting on some music. I ended up putting on some Selena, trying to calm myself down, trying to take my brain to a different place. And then that he comes out and he's like, Mr. Stewart. And I was like, yes. And he was like, follow me, please. And I was like, okay. So we walk into his office and we sit down. And he's like, okay, Mr. Stewart, have a seat. And I was like, okay, doctor. And he was like, Mr. Stewart. He was like, there's good news, but it's not the best news. He was like, it's still bad news. And I was like, okay. He was like, okay, take a deep breath for me. And I took a deep breath and he was like, okay. So it shows that your muscle is contracting hard, but that it's nothing that we should be afraid of. He was like, as of right now, it looks like it is contracting a little hard, but that's not what's worrying me. He was like, what's worrying me is the fact that you have 4 clogged arteries. He was like, the good thing is that they're not 4 major clogged arteries, but they are 4 small arteries that they're inflamed. And he was like, and they're leading to 4 major arteries. I was like, okay, but what does that mean? And he was like, so since they're inflamed, he was like, it makes it extremely difficult to try to go in and put a stent, because since they're smaller and they're inflamed, we're scared that they're gonna burst if we try to go in. And he was like, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna put you on these blood thinners. He was like, extreme blood thinners, to try to put less tension on your heart when it comes to pumping. And then he also said, and what they're gonna do is they're thin blood thinners, and they're also to like help the inflammation. So he didn't tell me how many milligrams they were at first. So when I got them, saw that they're 375 milligrams. Here they are. It's for 14 days. I don't have them all in here. I have them spread out in my little time and date thing. And then he also said, I'm going to send you a cream to help with the pain and then inflammation on the top of your chest. So here's the cream. That cream is so fucking potent. It's 100 milligrams. And literally, as soon as I put it on, it like numbs the shit out of my chest. And it brings down the inflammation on my chest. So I told him, I was like, okay, well, so I'm going to take these medications. And he was like, yes, so you're going to take these medications. He was like, and I'll see you back in 2 weeks. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, so what if this doesn't work? He was like, well, let's not talk about that yet. Let's do this first, and then we'll talk about if it doesn't work in the future. And I was like, okay. So I was like, so he said, he was like, so what he would want to do is, let's say if it does work, that he wants to go in, unclog them, and he wants to put a stent in. He was like, depending on how everything goes, then I'll be able to give you more in depth of time. And I was like, okay. And then I told him about that I wasn't able to do the blood work. And he was like, yeah, I know. He was like, but if you can do that as soon as possible, so that way we can get an estimate of, you know, like I told you, of when all of this started. He was like, what I'm thinking off the top of my head is, because your sugars were so irregular and they were out of control, what it did, it triggered everything. And it messed up with your nervous system and how your body processes everything. And I was like, but my sugars are like under control now. I was like, I'm under new medication. Like, when I tell you guys, like, I take up to 7 pills now for my blood sugar, my blood pressure, my cholesterol. So I was like, but it's under control now. Like, so does this mean that I have a stronger, chance of getting better? And he was like, Mr. Stewart, we don't really know that right now. And I was like, okay. In my head, I was like, fuck. How am I going to tell the people that I love? Like, I have so many things that I want to do. Like, I want to see all my kids grow up. I want to see them graduate. I want to see them live the careers that they want to. I want to get married. I want to have a baby. I want to see my kids get married and find love. I want to be here for all the small things. And what's hitting me worse now is like the guilt. The guilt is what's eating me, because I'm like, fuck. I'm like a grenade. Like when I implode, I'm gonna take out so many people with me. And most of my family hasn't never dealt with anyone dying so close to us. So I'm like, I'm gonna kill them. Like a little part of them is gonna die. And then I'm like, it's all because of me. So that was another reason why I kept it to myself for so long. Because I was like, how do you tell the people closest to you that you only have 2 years with them? So after that, I took my nephew out for his birthday, and we were at the mall, and I started feeling really weak. This was like right before my medication got there. I started feeling really weak, and I was holding on to the escalator, and I felt like I was about to pass out. So I ended up texting one of my really good friends, and I was like, hey, can you do me the favor of calling me like in 10 minutes and telling me like, hey, we're gonna meet up sooner, because I don't want to worry my mom or my nephew that like I'm not feeling good. And they were like, okay. So she called me, and I told my mom, I was like, oh ma, like I have to go, like me and my friends are gonna meet up sooner. We're gonna meet up sooner. So I was like, so when I went, they like did all the tests, and I was like, I told them what happened, like what was happening, and they were like, okay. So they ran the test, and they said that the reason why that was happening is because my heart was pumping really low, so it wasn't letting the oxygen get to my body. So I was like about to pass out. So they said that they wanted to admit me. So the one thing that my doctor did is he gave me his on-call number. So I called him, and I was like, hey doctor, this is what's happening. Like, I'm gonna need you to call this hospital so that way you can all get on the same page. And he was like, oh, okay. So he called them, and then in like 15 to 20 minutes, he called me back. And he was like, Mr. Stewart, they're gonna try to admit you. And I was like, okay. And he was like, but I don't recommend it, because what they're gonna try to do is they're gonna try to put you on the antibiotics through the IV, and they're gonna try to rush the surgery. And he was like, in all honesty, the way that your heart is going right now, especially after seeing this, you're definitely not gonna make it. And I was like, okay, doctor. And he was like, my biggest suggestion to you is to just wait for the medication. And he was like, it should get there tomorrow because we send it in express. And I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, doctor, so I'm gonna follow with what you're telling me. So then I ended up getting released. Shout out to Olivia, because she picked me up. So then the next day, right before I go to work, I get the medication. It like comes at the crack of time. So that's when I saw that it was so potent, and I ended up taking the pill, and I ended up putting on the cream. When on my way to work, I was like looking up the side effects, and it was saying that it's gonna give me diarrhea, that it's gonna give me like blurry vision, it might give me blurry vision. I'm gonna feel loopy. I'm gonna feel dizzy, and there's a possibility of migraine. So honestly, guys, I don't even know how I got that through that day of work, because I started I started getting the upset stomach, and I was like, fuck, I'm gonna shit myself at work. I was like, I don't want to shit myself. And then out of nowhere, I ended up getting the blurry vision. that part was so scary because I'm already like blind. I'm supposed to wear glasses. At this point, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see anything that was in front of me. Like I was literally this close to the machine, trying to like differentiate like what was what. I just wanted to say, like, I'm sharing this because when I started doing YouTube, I told myself that YouTube was going to be like a diary for me to get out my emotions and to share things. And that's why I'm sharing this. Like, the biggest thing that this has shown me is that, like, life is extremely short. Like, I'm thankful and I'm grateful for everyone. My family has been so supportive. My friends have been so supportive. I love every single one of you. And I just want to say I'm sorry. Because I know it's not my fault, but you know, you can't help but feel the way you feel. But I'm going to keep you guys updated with whatever happens. I'm trying to stay as strong as possible and not like overwork my heart. But it's difficult. That's what I was saying. Like, I go from processing one thing to processing something else. And then sometimes I just wish that I didn't have it. So I'll be able to fully process everything and dive into my emotions. But in honesty, I can't. Because as soon as I get overwhelmed, doesn't matter if I've taken it or not, if I'm on the cream, I can feel my chest getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So I'm a strong believer that God does everything for a reason. So we're just gonna go with God's plan. And whatever God's plan is for me, that's what God's plan is for me. I'm also sorry that this video is extremely long. But thank you guys for listening. I love you guys. And I'll keep you guys updated on whatever happens. Good news or bad news. I love you guys.